The Arizona Cardinals need to shift how they run their offense in 2025. I'm going to discuss it with a familiar face to round out this week. Let's discuss.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Cardinals, Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen, free wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. We're rounding out guest week. It's been a hell of a week, and I haven't even been here. It's kind of a severance kind of situation, I guess you could say, for the cool people who watch that show. And we're rounding it out today with, charity case, a dude who, so this is Bo Brack, PHNX Cardinals, former co-host of mine, close buddy of mine. I was trying to think, like, have we completely liquidated the insult that we've given to each other at this point, with it being almost 10 years? Like, is there anything original that can come out?
I mean, knowing you, no, we barely scratched the surface. I mean, you give me a lot of ammo on a daily basis. So no, I mean, I'm excited about the future of our insults. I mean, as far as you're probably tapped out. You don't have too much, I'm lame because I'm a dad. I'm tied down. I'm not living the single life or any of that stuff. So yeah, I mean, everything you've thrown at me. Used to say I lived in a tree house up in the Pacific Northwest. Yeah. Like, that's all over now. I'm back in the, part of civilization. So yeah, you're tapped out per usual, not an original guy, not creative. And yeah, I've just got, endless amount of ammo.
Okay. Just as, air between your ears. That's it, everybody. That's what air between your ears looks like. That's what it looks like. You've been lame way before you were a dad. And just because I give you ammo doesn't mean you're smart enough to be able to use it. So let's move. One thing I think would be very smart for the Cardinals in 2025, especially when they're on the precipice of having to decide between Kyler Murray or not Kyler Murray, depending on what happens this year, you would think. I think they should be throwing the ball more. And I'm not talking about, run and gun down the field, West Coast offense necessarily. I'm talking about putting the ball in your best player's hands more than 22 or 23 times a game behind the line of scrimmage. I know it's playing with fire, especially with running the ball as being, the most effective way to matriculate the ball down the field, Bo. Do you see them utilizing Kyler Murray's arm a little bit more in 2025 as kind of the gap between the good offense and the bad offense that we've seen?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think that there was kind of the run-heavy offensive scheme was maybe at a necessity, right? A survival tactic, because they were undermanned on the defensive side. Like, I know you can say that the defense was the most consistent group between offense and defense in 2024, but they were still underserved as far as the personnel that they had out there. And I think, time of possession, controlling the football, running the clock was kind of a weapon to try to get their defense and keep them off the field. Because, like, as much as they did a great job of bending, not breaking, they were on the field a long time. So I think that was because they didn't want to put him right back out there. So they needed to sustain some drives. But now it's like up to Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. to force that issue, right? It's not like you have to earn that. I think you really have to earn it in this offense. If they come out of the gates, depending on how the schedule falls, and Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyler Murray look like they've taken that next step, I think you just parlay that into what you're calling for and throwing the football. Everybody wants to see that. Like, you got Marvin Harrison Jr., you got Trey McBride, you got Kyler Murray with that arm strength, and Michael Wilson, some nice complementary pieces. Everybody wants to see him air it out a little bit.
Yeah, and I think, and this is a tough to defend sentence about Kyler Murray going into through year 6 is he needs to be in a rhythm. Like, I think it's like you need to see the ball go in early. You need to have a three-point shooter make a three early to kind of set the stage for the game. And what we saw a lot, especially during the beginning of the season, this is really irrespective of win or loss, was they hammered James Conner in the first quarter. And I think if you're going to do that, maybe pepper in some screenplays, maybe a design run for Kyler to see him get hit, just get the juices flowing. Kyler, Carson Palmer's old thing about wanting to get hit to start the season. I think it starts early, and in the scripted plays, they were so good last year, scoring on their first possession a lot. mostly with the catalyst of running the ball. But when that didn't work, we saw it in week 12 in Seattle was really like, oh no, when they can't run the ball, none of this works against a terrible Seattle defense up until that point.
Yeah.
It's playing with fire though. So is it like buyer beware, or is it like, you know what, restrictor played off, we'll see what happens in 2025 with K1?
No, I mean, we saw it far too inconsistently, right? I mean, you can name pretty much on one hand where he did get into a rhythm, no doubt about it, rhythm. Think about the New York Jets game. Think about the week 2 against the Rams, Miami. Like you saw Pete Kyler Murray, you can even say in the finale, he was really good for passing touchdowns, but that was against, a depleted 49ers roster. But like the consistency of him getting into rhythm needs to be far more than when he's not. And I think where he really struggled was 3rd and long, money downs. Defenses did a good job, and you saw a little bit of the older Kyler Murray, like where you thought it was like the Cliff Kingsbury offense, where he would try to go for broke and make these big superhero plays where it would turn into disasters, catastrophic. Like, why didn't he check down to Trey McBride? Why didn't he, and I think that, Kurt Warner, Cardinals' great quarterback, has been calling this for a long time. Like take the bunnies, take the layups, and just live to see another day. I think that probably would benefit Kyler, finding that consistency and that rhythm more throughout the season than he did last year.
Yeah, and I mean, especially in this day and age of going forward on 4th, from your own 48 beyond. Yeah, let Trey McBride run over a couple backers or a DB to get 8 when it's 3rd and 12, and then you have a conversation. I agree with that.
Right.
Bo Brack, PHNX Cardinals, joining me. I think my brain's starting to bend a little bit with this, and we'll talk about 16 specifically next segment. But when somebody broaches the topic of a wide receiver at 16, okay, I'm not saying that should happen. That's not even really the conversation. I think the Cardinals have plenty of wide receiver talent. They're just not using it properly. Greg Dortch, I almost threw my phone at the TV when I saw a slip screen for Greg Dortch in week 17 when the Cardinals were eliminated from the playoffs against the Rams. Like, you've got a dude. You've got a guy who can just be that, just the zip down of the offense to keep everything honest. They use Trey McBride. They use Marvin Harrison Jr. too much, and the other guys not enough. If they use the other guys, it would unlock everything else, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like when you do your draft prep for fantasy, right? And you've got all these guys that you really like. And then, like, once it comes on the board and, like, whatever, fantasy host site you're doing, they've got their rankings. And then, like, the guys you have are down the board a little bit. Then they go off your board and like, oh, damn it. Like, I wanted that guy. I identified that guy. And I feel like that's far too often Drew Petzing with his play calling. It's like the slip screen. It's like, oh, that's been a successful play for Greg Dortch and Kyler Murray. That since they've been teamed up even before Petzing was here. Why don't they use it? It was like they got to it and it was too late, too little, too late there. I mean, you had a 2 touchdown performance from Dortch in the finale, but before that, I mean, it was quiet. It was just far too quiet of a season. And I know you've got mouths to feed, but nobody outside of Trey McBride was eating in that passing attack.
Yeah, he's a crutch. He's a perfect guy to use. And you talk about him in the preseason, you talk about him when he's RFA'd every year, and then you talk about him in week 18. And there's nothing really in between. I mean, he had that great touchdown. I think it was against Chicago 2 years ago when Kyler came back and he made everybody miss. It's like, what else does this dude need to show to get 50 receptions or 60 receptions in a year to be that, Wes Welker or Julian Edelman type? Now, one more pass catcher. I talked a little bit about him last week. Do you see any Isaiah Likely in Elijah Higgins? Like, do you see a dude who can actually be responsible for a handful? Because I know we had a conversation off air where you're like, this dude can ball. They don't need, and then he had the guitar player sliding on 2 knees, touchdown catch against the Rams with Kyler Murray, Steph Curry turnaround. Like, can they use him also? Like, do they have enough with him too?
Yeah. I think he's a perfect complement. He's a tight end too. Like, I would never say roster him like in fantasy football.
Right.
Yeah, no, he's a guy that I think in the playmaking department, they very kind of scratch the surface. Like, he's shown the ability to get open and make the plays when they're there. I mean, it's far more quality than quantity. But no, I think he's a great tight end too. Like, Could he be Isaiah Likely light? Yeah, sure. Because I think he's a guy that is still growing into the position. He was a converted wide receiver to tight end from Stanford, but he's got the size, he's got the athleticism. Yeah, I think between him and Tip Ryman, like they do a lot of things like that Trey McBride is the complete package for.
For sure. And this is on Drew Petzing and Kyler Murray to figure out the elixir before week 1 and not be a work in progress throughout the season. Bo Brack,
like the Higgins thing and the Dortch thing, it gets back to my point about Kyler. It's like it doesn't have to be like if Marv's not there on money downs, you have guys that have the ability to make the play. And you have to just be able to kind of I know you go back to Allen, Texas, and you were this superhuman and you could make those plays, but the NFL has shown like it'll humble you and sometimes you need to just check down and hit your guy to move the chains.
This is a safe space now, Kyler. It's a safe space. Yeah. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. Targeted group or best player available at 16. We'll discuss it next. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. March Madness is here. FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on everything from buzzer beaters, Cinderella stories, even who's cutting down the nets, even as we wind down. Good luck picking the champion, man. Like there's 4, 5, 6 teams that can still win it. FanDuel's got you covered for all of it. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. We are winding up guest week. It's been a hell of a week. Started with Mina Kimes, Marcus Mosher, Tyler Drake, Arizona Sports, Damian Parson, the human encyclopedia from Locked On NFL Draft. Give you all the names that you may not know about. The dude just talked for 7 minutes in the final segment. I do it every year. I'm like, damn, I'm not talking. It's all you for 7 minutes. Give me your Rolodex. And he did. And it was great. He actually went almost 10 minutes. It was fantastic. Bo, we've discussed this weeks ago. Things are a little bit more clear now. Are you looking at a targeted position group, interior defensive line, offensive line, edge rusher, corner, best available at 16 and let the draft gods decide?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is going to fall on the latter, right? But the strength of this draft is the defensive front 7, but I think the Cardinals would like to, best case scenario, come away with another edge, right? To get that guy that can kind of pin his ears back, but also do some of the things that Nick Rallis and Gannon asked out of their outside linebackers, to kind of get into that rotation. But if they were to, I think they focus on that unit, right? The defensive line or the edge. I really think that's their priority. But depending on how the draft dominoes fall, like I think a lot of teams are going to have that mindset. Now you just got to have to start doing the math. Like once you start to incorporate, how many quarterbacks could go in the top 15, how many tight ends inexplicably could go in the top 15, wide receivers, tackles. But then, like once you start to see like, okay, well, maybe now you might be getting too down the depth chart as far as these prospects go. Then you start to look at some different position groups with guys who might be, higher tier talent.
Yeah. I mean, I've been, just going back and forth with the fact that trade back seems super sexy because they need everything. If you trade back to the high 20s, but then you're playing with even more fire because you have less control, but you're getting potentially another pick, before 70, which in this draft is massive. The thing that I struggle with trying to define is which group is closer to being a strength, defensive tackle or pass rush. And I think the answer is pass rush, but it's closer than you would think, depending on what Darius Robinson and BJ Ojulari are naturally.
Yeah.
Why not amplify the strength that's almost there, as opposed to taking a position group that's C plus B minus to a B when you can get to an A minus in the pass rush group? So I agree with you there. Now, the thing with offensive line for me, and I'm not being a stickler, I'm not being, stubborn when it comes to this. It's just, I don't know how much of my thought process is, well, this is Kyler's potential last year. Let's give him everything possible, which seems really irrational for how you're building long-term success. I just can't. If you get a guy who can play guard or center or tackle at 16, it's like, it seems like a no-brainer to me also. So that's where I struggle.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that they've telegraphed with the way that it's the most run back group we've seen in a long time with this offensive unit. Like the entire offensive line that ended the season is coming back and looks like they're poised to start the season, from Evan Brown to Isaiah Adams at the guard spots to the, the mainstays and Paris Johnson Jr. and Yelda Froholt. Like, absolutely. I think that there are two tackles that you consider. I just don't think they're going to get to them, right? I don't think Membo or Will Campbell are going to be there at 16. So, yeah, if they were there, I think that becomes a tough decision. But then, otherwise, yeah, you're looking at the pass rush group where I think that you've just been dying for an offseason to be able to improve that group. And even when they had opponents that were inferior, they just didn't have the ability to win one-on-one. Like they would get the matchups they want, and they had these guys that just couldn't get and create pressure. I think they can get somebody there that would put them in a good position. But man, I think that Monty Ossenfort has shown the ability, along with his scouting department, to find offensive line talent wherever, anywhere. Like they're just like, he's an offensive line MacGyver so far to me. Like he can figure it out. Give him a tube and a pair and some Tic Tacs, and he's going to get you a starting left guard, which is crazy. So can he do that in day 2? Potentially, but yeah, I think they just continue to lean into the strength of this draft, unless it's just kind of pick clean as far as the top guys. I'm with you, man. Like, I think they want to trade back. I think that's probably usually the case with Ossenfort to really kind of bolster his draft capital. But I really get the sense that a lot of teams want to trade back. So, does the value go away?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the best thing for the Cardinals, if they were to want to do that, is not to have a wide receiver go before them, because then Dallas is going to take a wide receiver because they're maniacs. It doesn't, but that second, if it's T-Mac from Arizona or Luther kid from Missouri, whoever it is, Matthew Golden, who's mocked to the Cardinals a couple of times, maybe want to throw up. That's the best case, because 16 is a perfect for a team in the mid-20s to move up and get their wide receiver for the future. Marcus Mosher I had on Tuesday. He really is making me fall in love with Gray Zabel, the interior offensive line from North Dakota State, because of this reason. It terrifies me if this offensive line is without Yalta Froholt for a second. Mm-hmm. And that guy can play every position. You can move Evan Brown over, you can have John Gaines play, but it's this locomotive can't stop in 2025 if there's injury. It can't. There's no excuse for this team to not be a fringe playoff team, irrespective of it. So that's why, and again, it goes back to the ridiculous thought that it's this is for Kyler Murray only because we need to see, but we should have seen already. So that's I don't know. My brain's in a pretzel, man.
I mean, there's a good chance that I have a pretty good confidence level, I'm sure, with Marcus and yourself that Gray Zabel is going to be a good starting offensive lineman in this league. But coming from North Dakota State, there's a little bit longer of a leap there to get ready to be plug and play. So I just think with 16, especially with what you outlined there, and I agree with you as far as the expectations, are you going to be able to get an impact maker at 16, or you trade down your first round pick? Let's just say that. Are you going to be able to get an impact maker if you get that guy on the offensive line, or is Isaiah Adams, Jonah Williams, Kelvin Beachum, Evan Brown going to be standing in their way? And do they have a role on game day? I'd rather have somebody get into that rotation in the interior of the defensive line or off the edge.
Yeah, and I get it. Keeping it simple when you have all these options. Luckily, their options are necessarily shrunk to just a couple. At the end of 2022, it was everything. They only had 45% of their roster retained. This is a good problem to have, and luckily enough, we're able to talk about it. Are they done in free agency? I'm going to bring up a name to you because Mack Wilson doesn't really have an impactful running mate still. I've got a couple names in mind. We'll discuss it next. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. That's called the tease. Please go to the YouTube channel, search Locked On Arizona Cardinals, hit the subscribe button, turn notifications on. Follow him at BOBRACK on Twitter. The Kazir White thing's fascinating because we haven't heard anything. Will Hernandez, we haven't heard anything. Rumblings here and there. Really quick, I wasn't going to bring this up, but are you in the camp they should bring Will Hernandez back 2 year, $8 million? Just kind of run it back what they did before? I feel like he was great on the right side.
I just don't know if he would start. I think that they're fully in the Isaiah Adams camp.
Really? Okay.
And I don't think it's a knock on Will. And I don't know what his I mean, I got to talk to Will at the Super Bowl, and I think he's on obviously the right road to recovery. But that happened in October. So like I think step one, get completely healthy, get in a position to play. And I think once he is there, he's really gonna his market will heat up. Yeah, because you is that you want to get off of Will Hernandez?
Yeah, and I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, because I see him as a Kelvin Beachum, same kind of dude, different positions naturally, but Swiss Army knife. You trust him, you love him. He's great in the locker room. He's an Arizona Cardinal. Like
I think he's got a market to start though. I mean, and for him, like wanting the best for Miho or whatever, like he probably could go follow Clayton Adams to Dallas. Like once he's healthy and once he can check that box. And like I don't think that the Cardinals could say, hey, definitively you come back and like you can compete for right guard, left guard, but we got two guys right now that we have penciled in.
Got it. Yeah, and Kazir White, like I know that he wasn't great last year. I know he hasn't. You don't need these guys to be elite 1%er Pro Bowlers. You need them to fit in the machine that is Nick Rallis' ever-changing defense. And Kazir White does that. And him and Mac Wilson were above average without any real front in front of them last year.
Yeah. Everybody loves Kazir White, right? I mean, all his teammates will say he's a dog. And, as far as the leadership qualities, it's everything you want. It's just the brutal reality of the NFL. Like when you have somebody that was, a fringe roster type at one point, switched positions from safety to linebacker, was a journeyman at one point until Gannon got his hands on him in Philly, and then he takes off. I just think his shelf life is a little bit shorter, unfortunately, and they just wanted to get a little bit more athletic, maybe faster at the position. And I think that there was just a tough conversation that was had after the season that really kind of was just this amicable divorce, right? And, even though he's still out there and his market's tricky, I think the rest of the NFL is trying to figure out, what he's worth and what role he could play, going forward. I know he's a productive guy. I know what he transcends even his productivity, but I think the Arizona Cardinals and Kazir White, like somebody DM'd me that they DM'd Kazir White and they said, and the Cardinals even made an offer. And he was like, no, Brody, never happened. So I think that like Gannon and his staff and Monty Ossenfort went to a few players, and you can kind of just follow the tea leaves, like Kazir White, Zach Pascal. There was just a group of guys that, thank you for your service, but, we're moving on. We're getting younger at the position.
It's such a crazy transition that I'm still getting used to. Is like the last regime's like, no, just, oh no, please stay here. Please. We love you. Please stay. So I think maybe there's still like little wrinkles of that in my thought process where it's like, it's like attachment syndrome or whatever, detached. Like it's just, now they don't need that anymore, which is interesting.
Right.
Now, the name that I wanted to bring up, this is Bobby Wagner's fault because it shows that off-ball backers who are exemplary at their craft, who can avoid major injury, can still make an impact depending on the scheme. CJ Mosley's out there. He's 32. He played only 4 games last year, but the 3 years prior, he had over 150 tackles. He would add immediate notoriety to that room and a great leader in the middle of the field who still loves to hit people and was very, very good for a long time. Depending on price, and this is going against everything you just said. So I'm assuming that you would deter away from this, but
if it's not White, then why would it be kind of similar? Even though I think Mosley probably has got a bigger market than Kazir White, but it's still just kind of still an NFL enigma as far as the market goes and what he's worth and what opportunities are going to be appealing to Mosley or White. I think that the Cardinals are in on Akeem Davis Gaither being their starting Mike linebacker, green dot. If CJ Mosley wants to come in and be a depth piece, even though he can go play somewhere else more snaps, maybe he would do that. Like they're not going to be short on leadership. Like the caliber of player they've drafted, the caliber of guys they brought in through free agency, like they have created an infrastructure there that even with Kazir White exiting, this organization still exists and will continue to exist. And then you look at, Rallis and JG's track record, starting with Kazir White and TJ Edwards in Philly. taking an undrafted guy from Wisconsin and Edwards and turning him to the top linebacker on the market a couple of years ago. And then Kazir White and what they were able to turn him into. Like, they can take guys that they just believe in their skill set and turn them into very capable linebackers at this level.
Yeah, so it seems like they're done in free agency for the most part. We'll see with a couple names here and there if it's going to be housekeeping with Will Hernandez or otherwise. They could draft an off-ball. I mean, like Edger
I think defensive back still is the spot, man. Like,
yeah,
it just seems like they're dead set on getting a vet there, but the market has just been picked clean, and then you got red flags with the shoulders for Asante Samuel Jr. Like, I think they might look post-draft at that spot.
Be crazy. The Denzel Ward conversation for like a second was awesome.
I know, he's so good.
I know, but he makes way too much. I mean, listen, they could go like Will Johnson's not going to fall. He's probably going to go top 10. But with all of these things, like, not everybody can go top 10, man. Like, the Cardinals are going to have a top 10 pick at 16, and it's going to be fascinating to see what they do. Tell them where they can find you, bro.
Yeah, PHNX Cardinals, just like Alex here on Locked On Cards. We're talking about this team every day. Just having a good time doing it, leading you up to draft, and not much to it. At Bo Brack on Twitter, follow that, PHNX_cards. So sweet,
cool. That was guest week. I will be back on Monday in the flesh, relaxed and ready to talk drafts. We'll go overdrive as we're only a couple weeks away now. Locked On Cardinals. Remember, without you, there is no me. I'll talk to you Monday.